So the idea there is to sit there and say, we win by helping each other to get the exposure.
Yeah.
And it's resonating. That's exciting.
And I think that speaks to more than just like culinary. Like that's even like we say the same thing about like comedy and stuff. Where it's like
absolutely
the rising tide raises all boats. And I think when Indianapolis does well in kind of anything, that we all do better.
Yeah, the brand connects over to.
Yeah. Bobby, I'm eating brunch with my people though. Homie Dykers cooked up a feast and we bout to eat it, bro. Fucked around and had to mix the lobster with the poutine. Daddy is rolling blue dream, them boys got down a routine. It's Naptown culture, cooking 7 courses. Had to pass the torch and now I'm grabbing second portion. So sit back, relax, grab a drink and a smoke. It's hard to brunch on the way and get prepared for the jokes. Whoa, it's hard to brunch, yeah. It's hard to brunch, whoa.
Hi, welcome to the Harder Brunch Podcast. I'm your host, Dyke Michaels. With me, as always, my host, Daddy's Jay McKee.
All you need is love.
The ones, the twos, the wheels of steel, the sauce boss of Indianapolis, and the last woke dragon. Give it up for Zach Rohn, everybody.
Howdy doody dandy.
Hey, I like that.
Seemed confused. And a very special guest with us. First time in studio from Culinary Crossroads, Larry Dickerson. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, guys. It's great. It's great to be here.
You didn't have a catchphrase ready on deck?
I was going to go, ba-ba-da-da.
There it is.
All you need is love.
There it is. I love that.
Are you a big Beatles fan?
I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Man, we were talking upstairs about the Beatles, and he was there for the Beatles when they started. When they started, they came out. And what was the album they came out with first that you said you liked?
Well, I liked them all. I followed them all the way through. I was telling him at that particular time you'd buy albums at grocery stores. And so we'd go to the big town in Anderson to the Payless, and my mom would shop and I'd go to the aisles. And then every time there'd be a new Beatles album that would come out, I'd bring it home, put it on to the turntable and play both sides until I'd memorized the whole album. And I was just telling about the big shift where, they were doing She Loves You, yeah, and then they go to Help, and the next thing you know, here comes like Rubber Soul. Like, what the hell is this happening here? And Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's. Yeah, it was really cool time. And at the same time, I'm growing up. I'm going through adolescence, and these guys finally just like, you know what? We're going to play what we want to play.
Yeah.
And it was a really tumultuous time in the country, and they were just sort of, breaking it up, saying we're not going to play the way you used to play it. So I'm a big Beatles fan.
There is also something about, like you were talking about, like going to the store and buying an album. There's something I feel like people miss out today, especially like young people, about not having like the physical music, like going whether it was a record or you like it was like tapes for me, but it was just like going and getting something where there was like a physical tactile contact, like you were saying, you were learning the lyrics from the liner notes, like that sort of thing. I feel like we lose a step with streaming,
right? And there's the art was like
artwork,
a big thing. Like it kind of like transitioned to music videos, right? But like art was like huge in like the CDs.
And just the whole social strata that was with it as well. Like in those particular times when you're off to college and you're hanging out and you're going over to a party or somebody's house, one of the things I used to love to do is say, hey, where are your albums?
Yeah.
And party be getting going and just go through there and start seeing what they had there and said, hey, you mind if I throw this on? And that's a lost art. It just doesn't.
You got to learn a bit about a person doing this. Like Zach, when he goes over to people's houses, he goes through their medicine cabinet the same way. And he learns about people that way.
You tell lots.
More from music or the medicine?
I mean, I listen to music while I'm eating the medicine.
But Captain's always got to take his cut.
Yeah.
I like how I thought originally he was just looking in the medicine cabinet. Now he's just taking pills.
No, I kind of use it as a way to read the bones. I eat some of them. I look at some of them on a plate.
Okay, okay.
Divine from it.
That makes sense. Now, if you want to play like an album from somebody's like music deck, you have to know their password to their phone.
Yeah.
So you can't
get their face to unlock it.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, I like that. You could go to their music deck and just pull out a record. We don't have that anymore.
A few years ago, during the summer, it was really fun. we'd go out and get with folks, and you'd be around, boating or campfires or whatever, and bring out the portable speaker. And so I'd play this game, say, okay, you're up. And you'd be queued up. I'd say, okay, come up with your song. So you're queuing it up, and everybody's going to say, get ready to go. And it's really interesting because it's sort of like giving everybody a chance to get their genre up.
Yeah.
And then they listen to the other music with some intensity, because it's like, oh, man, LD, I didn't know that you really like that group. Oh, yeah, that's been one of my favorites. So it's a really cool thing in terms of socializing that takes the music and still makes it part of it, right? In the past, when you had albums, like they're throwing that album on, I guess we're going with the Beatles tonight, or we're going to go soft country or rap or whatever the case may be, and that you don't have that as much anymore.
I've learned a lot about music just from working in so many kitchens over the years, and then people, because I'm the first to tap out, because like I've seen music fights get pretty intense, or like somebody who's like, no, I want to play my music, so I'm much more of a passive observer when it comes to music. I'm like, play whatever, like I don't want to get into an argument over it. But yeah, I definitely listened to so many genres of music I don't think I ever would have kind of found organically if it wasn't for working in a kitchen and someone was like, okay, I'm gonna put this on. And we're going to listen to this.
Yeah. Today, in today's world, if you get on whatever your channel is, like mine's Spotify, a lot of times, you'll just take a particular group and say, I'm just going to go with that genre. And it'll bring you back to listen to that. Oh yeah, I remember how much I really enjoyed that. And out at our country club, if you will, we have a bocce tournament. So it's a bunch of older folks that are out there playing bocce on Thursday nights and drinking and having a heck of a time. And
nice.
And I've been self-nominated myself for the music person. So I'll bring it out there, and you throw that on, and all of a sudden, the 67-year-old is 23 that's out there dancing around or whatever. Yeah. So I love music, and the Beatles they really were their foundation point for me.
Yeah. That's crazy. You said you're 67. You seem to have such a youthful energy.
He's not 67.
No, I'm 65.
Oh, 65.
But that was in 67 when I was 10 years old. So
Gotcha.
It's like going on some 10-year-old's kid's head at that time and watching the Beatles go through there. So
I like that. Like Dyke's like, that seems like a lie. He's like, well, it is. I'm not.
It's not true at all.
But thank you. Yeah, you're as young as you decide to be. I really believe that.
Yeah, I started getting called old when I was 26 years old. When at 26, because I think I just always hung out with younger folks, and I continued to. So like, I was like 26 living in Bloomington. And 26 in Bloomington, you're supposed to be out of there.
Yeah, you were that dude.
Yeah.
Hasn't he left yet?
You a super senior? What are you doing? You're supposed to be gone in 4 years. Yeah, I was definitely that guy. They're like, you're old, man. I was like, well, I'm only 26. So like, go be 26 somewhere else.
Right.
Creeping us all out.
And when you're 26, you're moving to DC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I had graduated from university, was working for General Motors Corporation, one of the divisions. This was in Anderson, when Anderson had 60, 70,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
And I had been out and worked for 3 years, and, I just couldn't do it anymore. At that time, if you were sitting there and 26 and not married, you're like that dude that's still at school. Like,
what's wrong with him?
And I'd always had an interest in politics, so I just took my resume and myself and headed out to D.C.
Oh, wow. Did you have a career in politics?
No, I ended up being involved in politics. I learned about political fundraising, and took me back to Michigan, where I went to school at General Motors Institute. It's now called Kettering University.
Okay.
Quick little side note. This is at the time when General Motors was like the Google or the Facebook, or in terms of its just massive power.
Huge, yeah.
It owned and operated its own undergraduate engineering university.
Oh, wow.
So you had to get selected by the school and then get selected by the sponsoring division. And you go there, and 5 years later, you could sit there and work for GM, at least you thought you could, for the rest of your career.
Yeah.
And 3 years out, I said, I can't do this. And I had an interest, so I went to DC. I wanted to learn about politics, and you either go on the policy side or you go on the fundraising side. I went on the fundraising side because it's more like marketing.
Yeah.
And then that ultimately brought me back to Michigan, and another world, working with a small technology company, getting involved in local, state, national politics. And It was quite the run. That's where getting to Culinary Crossroads and tourism, that's where I sort of cut my teeth, because the technology firm that I worked for, we ended up getting a contract with Travel Michigan, not Pure Michigan at that time.
Okay.
And we got the contract with them to basically take those big 4-color travel guides.
Yeah.
You know, you dial an 800 number. I was telling them when we were having brunch, which, by the way, the brunch was just awesome.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kudos to you all for that.
We'll get to that.
So they had this guy that was running it, had come from American Express, and he said, well, why don't we just take all that information that's in this travel guide? And for today's audience, they'd say, well, of course they did that. But this is, you know, a bit a while ago. And why don't we put it all into a database so that when that person dials that 800 number, you can just basically give them the information they want immediately, right when they wanted it. So somebody's going to come up to northern Michigan. It's going to be in October. They got their kids. So they want a hotel that has an indoor swimming pool, and say, well, here's 4 of them. And we give it to them right over the phone. And then we had this radical technology that we used called a fax machine. Oh. And we would send that out there to them. And that was like, that was the king. I mean, and so that's what got me exposed to working with travel and tourism industry. And next thing you know, we're selling that technology to not just Michigan, but 6 or 7 other states around the country. It was pretty cool.
That's wild.
And what I want to point out, that was Hoosier hospitality going into technology, and that's what someone really needed.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me. I mean, at that particular time, we ended up working for Indiana Tourism as one of them. But this is when I'm living up in Michigan. I had left Indiana, and I spent 20 years up in Michigan before, you know, living in a lot of different other places around the country. But, you know, it was the whole idea, and some things didn't change. You know, data is still king, right? Yeah. I mean, at that time, it was the same way. How do you get someone what they want, when they want it, and put it in front of them to influence them?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's crazy. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of, like, when I was a kid going on vacation with my grandparents, and they had, like, the AAA. It was like a triptych thing, and it was like a flip over map.
Yes.
It was like Google Maps, but analog.
Yes.
And you would just like flip it over like every 100 miles or whatever. That's how I learned how to read a map. I remember it was like navigating for my grandparents and being like, oh, we got a right turn. Like I was like the original Siri of the car or whatever.
You were the original Siri.
Yeah. I had the Rand McNally, the big ass one that you'd have and throw that in the suitcase, because when you're heading out to another state and you're getting on here and said, okay, I've come in here to Chicago and I've got to get to Springfield, get the Rand McNally map out. I'm old.
When I go out of town, for comedy, I still like buying a physical map. There's something I like about having, because I have a better idea of like the size and shape of everything. If I'm looking at my phone, I can't tell where anything is in relation to anything else. I'll get there, you know, give you directions, but I don't have like a kind of like a mental map of where I'm at, you know.
I'll tell you how old people. This is how you know you're getting older. The more angry at technology that you're getting. Like when I'm driving around with someone that's like, oh, just turn that thing off. It's not working. You can't trust those things. That's at least a decade older than me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The more that they trust the technology, the younger they are.
Yes, that's right.
Wait,
that's right.
You saying you've never been led astray by a GPS?
I mean, but it was my fault. Yes. Zach, that was very rude. Can you hit the shame button for yourself, please? Just a shame. If anybody knows me, I'm very bad at directions. But anyways, but Dyke, you do get mad at the GPS when we're on road trips.
Oh, this was pointed. This was pointed at Dyke.
I knew where it was going. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I've. It's not just that. It's any time of like, if I know where I'm going and someone is like, I can tell they're waiting for the next thing, and I'm just like, shut your secretary up. I know where we're going. We'll get you there.
I'll use the
slurs.
I'll use the GPS, but I'll look at it like I'll put in the address just to make sure there's no traffic, and I'll look at where I'm going and get like a 4-road idea.
Yeah.
And then I'll have it on there to keep me on track.
Now that's the only time it's bitten me in the ass is because it does know the traffic sometimes,
right?
And I'll be like, go this way, it's faster, and then it's like the road closure I didn't know about. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, all right.
There's no road here anymore. This was 10 years ago.
But there's also been times where it has not been aware of a construction situation.
I would say it's 50-50.
I'd say it works 10% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I just trust my gut. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That works.
I drive at home with no headlights. You know.
All right. He's bringing up something that was an honest mistake. I'll just tell you real quick, LD. We were going to a comedy show. We were going to watch this very funny man named Tim Dillon, and I forgot that my lights were out. I had one light out. So when I drove there, another light went out. So when we tried to drive back from Ohio to Indianapolis,
no front lights.
Right, and I thought, there's 0 front lights.
Yeah, your face is correct. Your reaction is 100% correct there. Yeah. That's imagine being in the car and finding this out.
Here's the thing,
man. It's cloudy tonight. I can't see shit out there.
LD, you've drove on the interstate before, being a traveling man yourself.
Yeah.
It's pretty light on the interstate, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking maybe we just like kind of follow a truck close behind.
Or the moonlight.
Be guided. Many people have been guided by the moonlight. It did not work.
No.
Wow.
No, we got one headlight working, and that was enough. But then when we got halfway, because it was like, you're tricked in the city because you think there's like an ambient light, and he's like, "Look, we can see."
We can make it
and
back.
I was like, "We're in the city." We were halfway between Ohio and Indianapolis, and there's no one else around. And I go, let's do a little experiment. Turn that one headlight off for a second. And he turned it off, and it was like you were dead. I mean, there was nothing. And that split second of terror, and I was like, that's what it would have been like. We would have been dead. We want to obviously talk to you about Culinary Crossroads.
No, we can do whatever. We can talk about the Beatles. We can talk about, it really kicked up when it went to MapQuest, right? Then you could you print out the maps and you'd have that with you there. So, yeah, we had LD on the history of travel guidance there.
Well, no, that's very interesting because so how did your career, how did that kind of turn into what you do now? Like, how did that happen?
It's sort of, this has been a culmination of, 25, 30 years of a circuitous route with a lot of great experiences. And I came back to Indy full time about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and having been out on the road, done a lot of work with travel and tourism, worked with a lot of different organizations, and I'm back here. And, that same opportunity that I had to where I sold it to one state ended up that I was then selling it to 9 states. Nice. That worked great when you're in the club, right? But technology is like a commodity, and then everybody and their brother gets in there, and then somebody else comes in, and you're not in the club. And there's always this herd mentality that would take place with state tourism organizations. So I had some ideas about how I thought you might be able to get at it in a little bit more entrepreneurial way, and in a way that would resonate much differently if you go back in 1993, where, we took that travel guide and we put it into a database and an 800 number. Similarly, today, it's great that you have websites and their investments, but people just make their decisions a lot differently than they do then, right? They may go to vet something on a website, but you don't usually go in and say, you know what, I've just made it to Birmingham. And so I'm going to go on to the Alabama or the Birmingham website to figure out where I'm going to go to eat tonight. I can Yelp it out. I can do so many different ways to where I can instantly get it. So the strategy and tactics of how you promote the state and how you promote the brand, I thought was different. And that's what got me talking to the administration. And Culinary was the one that sort of brought me to it, because when I moved back, I had a chance through friends of mine to get to know a lot of the women and men that were really making it happen. And I had been flying in throughout my career and been spending a lot of time here. So every time I'd come in, I'd fly into Indianapolis, and I'd come and I'd stay downtown. I'd say, man, this city's really growing up, and I'm seeing a lot of cities around the state. Yeah, I came to believe that Indianapolis, I still believe it is one of the top 2 or 3 tier 2 cities in the country.
Let's go! Let's get an applause for that. I mean, I'm here for that, Indy. Indy, you heard it right here.
And so what came with that was the culinary scene. And you heard me talk when we had the popcorn event about Greg Hardesty, and you heard John Brooks and Esteban talk about him, and I got to know Chris Ely and Neil Brown and Abby and that whole group of rock stars that sort of shaped the scene before I was even here. But they had some ideas of what they wanted to do to try to raise the awareness of the culinary scene, and a lot of that had to do with doing pop-ups outside of the state, and then reciprocate and bring them back here, which good idea and great to go out there and do it, but fraught with exposure, right?
Yeah. Nobody
shows up. Or you get 100 people there and somebody thought you should have 200 or whatever the case may be. The biggest problem that I thought we had was, well, what do you do next? What's the narrative, right? How do you keep water in the sponge, as I use in terms of, so that's when we came up with, why don't we create the brand? And we created Culinary Crossroads. And you'll see, on our stuff, there's 4 stars, people, products, places, and services that define Indiana's culinary landscape and make it the place where people want to live, work, and play. So we took that to travel and tourism. We took that to the agriculture through the administration. We took it to Ivy Tech Community College with their culinary school and others. And our first foray into it was food sports competition.
Nice.
So we now promote this Team Indiana. We've got 7, 8 of them that are heading to Dallas, and I'm heading to Dallas on Tuesday for the World Food Championship. So that was the first way that we got into it and said, I think we can build this brand. We started those discussions in 2018, and we launched with going to the World Food Championships in 2019. So as you guys know, what you're building here, which is really cool, brands or products or whatever, they always take longer than you think. But it's been a great journey so far.
Absolutely. Larry, you're my hero. I want to look like you when I get older. Not physically, because that'd be white, but like what you're doing is like the connecting and all that. That's amazing. I think it's cool that you've started connecting with you're talking about working in politics and going back and forth across the aisle and trying to get things done at the heart of things. And then what you have a eye or a vision of seeing, all right, culinary is the glue to get people together. And that's just amazing to speak for itself.
Thank you so much. And I think I was sharing with you when I got involved in wanting to learn about politics. As I said, I really just wanted to figure out how folks went about getting elected, and didn't know whether I wanted to run for office or help people get elected, and always felt in my mind that no matter what happened, if I understood that it's at the foundation of the country, that it would always be helpful to my own business, to my family, to whatever business that I've had, because everybody and their brother can relate to the political world. They can relate to the campaigns, and actually, in my business, including with Culinary Crossroads, I take every project on as if it's a campaign.
Yeah.
And if you think about it from that standpoint, you got a certain amount of time to get yourself elected. Being elected may mean grow your show, change your organization, or whatever the case may be. But you also know that during that period of time, whether it's 18 or 24 or 36 months, that you have to have the patience to know that it's not election day. But you have to have the commitment that says, if you're not doing door to door today, or you're not raising money, you're not going to be in any position to win. So that helps people to get through the little stuff and realize that it's important.
Yeah, it's very interesting too. Like you were talking about, even in the '60s when it was late '70s or early '70s when you got into politics. When was that?
It was actually I went out there, and it would have been in 1983.
Okay, 1983. Well, we were even talking about even the '60s, like how the arguments and the different policies or where people stood were different. Like people were having different conversations and trying to move the country forward. I was talking to Stuart Huff too. He's like, even back in the day when there wasn't even a red and blue party when they first built our country, but the conversations were very different. And it's just interesting to see how everything evolves now, and then how every time that there's a big conversation, it feels like pandemonium, but still we get through it somehow.
Bro, are you a Federalist? I messed that up. I sat on it for a minute and a half.
You should have just gone with it.
Yeah.
Can we get the boo button?
Yeah, really good. I think we're all aware.
I took the boo one off. No, that's fair. That's for me too.
Federalist. Nope. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just making a point. Like the conversations have changed. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have longevity in your life and you've been out there and been active, you sort of live history, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I was a kid, during that time, and it does really help you along the way. Now you got to be careful about that, because then you're Uncle Lair that's like, oh, okay, tell me about all that, and they don't want it. But if you give it to them in the proper context to say, let me set this straight, that you think we're having tough times right now, which we are having tough times right now. Think about a time when you had a president assassinated, his brother assassinated, the leader of the black movement assassinated, all in a period of 4 or 5 year period of time. Meanwhile, you've got kids that are over in Vietnam that are leaving, and several of them aren't coming back. And the Beatles are taking off, and music's taking off, and it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was a crazy time in this country. And it made it, for myself, it made me formulate that says there's always going to be people on all sides of issues, and find areas where you can bring them together. And I would tell you, food, and I would, more than two can get a little complicated, right? but with Culinary Crossroads, that's one of the things that we're able to do. You bring folks in around, whether they're supporting food sports competition, or they're supporting a dinner series, or young professionals are going to a popcorn event, and you find out that that's something everybody can agree upon. That's something that everybody enjoys, and that's something that makes a difference in the way a city develops and the energy that's associated with it.
Now, you guys, you brought up popcorn twice. Did we actually say what popcorn was on here?
It's us trying to target and get to the young professionals. As I've told, and kudos to Heather Brogdon and Gwen Marcantonio, who really came up and had the creativity and the energy to get out to that group, and to John and Esteban. But the idea of popcorn is that message about people, products, places, and services, and defining, Indianapolis and Indiana. Today's leaders that are running the HR departments and building those businesses are a little bit older. Those folks that we had in that room last week when we had the popcorn event, they're going to be the ones that are going to be making the decisions. We want them to stay, number one, right? Yeah. And we want their companies to be able to recruit others. So getting them tuned in and finding ways to communicate with them, we had to have a, sort of a younger message. And I'm always a big believer in message and message carriers. So put somebody out there that connects with that group, keep the brand consistent in terms of it's no different for them when what we're talking about to the 55 or 60 year old. Yeah. And all of a sudden, that's how you grow the brand.
I mean, that's I feel like very similar to Carter Brunch. The Culinary Crossroads was like, when I started this podcast, I wanted to do a couple of things. Obviously, I wanted to have a comedy element to it.
Sure.
But every comedian almost has a podcast where they talk to other comedians, and they're great. A lot of them are great. So I was like, well, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel just talking to other comedians. And I was like, the other thing that I'm passionate about is the food service industry, and specifically the Indianapolis food service industry. And, I previously had been a small business owner, and been in the culinary scene, to some degree, most of my adult life. And I know there's so many people, there's so much talent, but I felt like there was at the time when Indianapolis, the culinary scene was shifting and evolving a lot. You would see a lot of the same people mentioned in a lot of the same conversations over and over again. And not to take away anything from
not at all
from those, but I knew so many people that were talented in Indianapolis that weren't being interviewed, that weren't getting that shine. And that was kind of my mission statement with Heart of Brunch, is like, I want to talk to a variety of different people. I want to talk to the people, not just at the top of the game, but like some people, maybe some people at the back of the house that aren't getting,
or the bottom of the game,
or the bottom of the game, or the people that are just starting off, basically,
or the restaurants that are closing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've done
Talking people down off a ledge.
yeah, like you're going to be okay, you know. But restaurateurs and chefs, as you know, they're some of the most resilient people that I've ever met. If I had to go to war, I'd go find me people that are in the food service industry because they're survivors. Just case in point of just coming through the pandemic, and you know, one of the things that makes it tough in that space is it's such a a disparate group of individuals. So they don't organize real well, right? Mm-hmm. But they're for each other, but they're not organized. So you can have bailouts for the airline industry, you can have bailout for the manufacturing industry, this, that, and the other. They never could get their hands around that. But look at it, they come out of it, and you know, the vast majority of them made it. And the other thing that I think is really great about them is that they don't spend any time really complaining. It's like, you know what, we got through that. They're like people in the South that go through hurricanes. It's like they just know we will get hit with this hurricane, a recession or whatever the case. That was a super hurricane in the pandemic. But still, they'll go through that and they'll just pick the pieces up and they'll go and they'll recreate themselves.
There was a time, and I think it was kind of like later in the summer of 2020, when the whole landscape of a bunch of things that got canceled and people had lost their jobs and lives, and it was looking real brutal. And then slowly people just started trying to, okay, how can we do things safely? And I would notice stuff like Bluebeard doing like a barbecue outside, or like people like completely changing their business from a bar to a grocery store.
Right.
And I remember walking around like Mass Ave, walking around like Fletcher Place, Fountain Square, and just seeing like all these businesses, because you could see everyone that was outside if they were doing anything. Nobody was doing anything inside.
Right.
And you would just see the transformations these people made. And there was part of me that was like, man, like we are, if nothing, like industrious. Like human beings, like there's, especially like in this city, there's just something about like, it was just like interesting to see the way people like, all right, how do we go forward? How do we figure this out? How do we curve? How do we, make something work?
Yeah, and they are our chef ambassadors, right? I mean, they're the ones to where their particular restaurants or their following, people say, hey, come in here. You want to get an idea of what Indy's about? You know, I'm going to take you to this particular restaurant, and they know when you're coming in there, they take good care of you, and they take that on with a lot of pride and a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And one of the subtle things that we have done with Culinary Crossroads, whenever it has included chefs, is we are adamant about paying the chefs. They are the talent. We want to change that mindset that says when you do either large events or small events, carve out the dollars to pay these women and men to come there because they're the star of the show. Mm-hmm. And that was something that when I was talking to some of them, getting this going way back when, I said, what's one of the things that really needs some work on? And I had a number of them saying, we want to help, but they can't keep asking us to do it for free. Mm-hmm. So we pay our chefs. And then what we did when we did our first spring dinner series is we had them to create their cause of choice. Oh, wow. So it was whatever particular nonprofit organization they wanted to give to. And we carved out $500 for each one of the chefs, over the 12 chefs in that first year, and had them to give that to a cause of their choice.
I love that. Wow.
It was really interesting, and what they chose to give it to. Sometimes it was a very personal issue. Another one, it was for a particular issue they cared about, whether that was medical or immigration or whatever. But it showed that says these people are paying attention. These people see these organizations, and it brought the awareness up to the folks that were at the dinners as well.
Wow, that's amazing.
I love that.
Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Cool.
Gen Z can't stop raving about the Harder Brunch Patreon.
Patreon.com/Harder Brunch slaps.
No cap, the Harder Brunch podcast is bussin' on God.
Move over, Boomer. Gen Z's here to talk to you about the Harder Brunch Patreon.
Harder Brunch podcast on Patreon, $3 a month, low-key a steal.
The Harder Brunch podcast, deadass, has me bricked up every day.
Listen to these all totally real testimonials.
No, I'm getting paid to do this, don't worry. Yeah. No, you think I do this for free? No.
The Harder Brunch podcast, deadass slaps.
Sound younger!
The Harder Brunch podcast, deadass slaps.
Just go to patreon.com/Harder Brunch.
The Patreon After Brunch podcast hits different. That shit makes you feel shit.
right, welcome back. We're talking to Larry Dickerson. Larry, you just got your first Harder Brunch experience today. I don't know how to like segue into what did you think about brunch without sounding like what did you think about my brunch, but like hopefully we extended some hospitality to you and showed you a good time.
You know, it was tremendous, and you know, having all the exposure to the squash, because we were talking about that it's something that I have not been one to dive into, but you know, having it today and the different iterations was fantastic. And I think it makes me think about when you try to get folks to decide to go to different restaurants and take on different cuisine. They're really reluctant to do that. And you know, today the different presentations of it. Now I had good counsel at the table that folks said, now go slow here, because you're going through, what was it, 6 courses, I think, that we...
Yeah, you're welcome.
That we had. And...
I saved your life.
You did save my life. Like, I better hold off here. I'm going to... we've done these dinners at Paramount Schools of Excellence that Tommy Reddix has there. And that's another Culinary Crossroads initiative called the Supper Club. And it's 1 chef, 6 courses, 30 people. Oh, it's fantastic. We'll have to get you guys there next year for it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where you have to sort of pace yourself all on the way.
Well, you said 30 courses?
6 courses, 30 people.
Oh, 30 people. Okay, I heard that wrong. I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah, it was a marathon.
I'm like, I'm out.
We came in the morning.
It's like the movie 7.
We watched all the Bourne Identity movies, and and it was interesting when the chefs were taking you through this, of if they thought about it as well. Like, you know what, you're gonna have food sweats by the time you got through course 4. But it was really, really enjoyable.
Thank you. Real quick, we'll just go through.
Yeah.
We had some, Zach and I had some fun with this one, because we were trying to think of like a good fall theme, and so we came up with Gourd Almighty.
Squash-based menu.
Squash-based menu. Which originally I was just like, I guess I wasn't 100% sure on the difference between gourds and squashes. So the gourds are typically more your like decorative, like the ones you see on the table and stuff like that.
I feel like some of them are crossover though.
And
you could like decorate with an acorn squash.
That is true, which I did today. But then also, like, I never thought of like a cucumber as being a squash. Some cucumbers squash.
I never thought about that either.
So we were like, okay, we're gonna do all this and work. And I think Zach and I feel pretty comfortable. Like we've been cooking together for like a couple of years now. We feel pretty comfortable if once we have the hardest part sometimes is coming up with the theme, and then once we have the theme, we're just like, oh, I know how to play around within.
Can
this.
riff on that.
Yeah. So. When we came up with it, we were both kind of excited because I could see like my gears turning, his gears are turning, and I look at Thad's face, and Thad's just like, "Oh, neat, we're eating gourds for breakfast."
I do think from the perspective, if I like came on as a guest and was like, "Oh, I got the gourd episode, great, okay,
yeah, we rocked it."
That but I feel like if you kind of come in under expectations, then it's really good.
Yeah, well, we were like. Literally like a week off of because Alan Sternberg wanted to come on, and he would have like done like a pumpkin like ravioli or something like that, which would have been amazing,
right.
And I was just like, this is gonna be great. You did the first course.
I had a spaghetti squash carbonara. It was just bacon, spaghetti squash, eggs, and butter. It was a pretty simple dish with a little bit of Parmesan over it.
And that was called squash, mince, and repeat.
Squash, mince, mince and repeat.
Oh my gosh!
And that bacon flavor through it was the bomb. And you gave me a tip to take that bacon and
I cooked
2 hours on 220
at like 220 for like almost 2 hours, like between an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I covered the spaghetti squash in the bacon fat before I roasted that to pull it.
Wow. So good.
We've done carbonara when we say quite a few times on here too, it's like you have to think of, we do about 52 episodes a year, and there's like 4 to 6 to 7 things.
Yeah, usually if there's a carbonara, Dyke has me do it. Like I show up and he's like, "Well, I'm doing a carbonara, so here's the ingredients."
I go, "Here's everything I prepared for you." And you just make it perfect, like
It's the
you
same with
always do.
hollandaise.
You know, there's some go-tos where I'm just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know,
Right.
So wait, he's your hollandaise man
he's the
now?
hollandaise guy. He's the sauce boss.
I've been
Sauce
the
boss.
hollandaise guy nearly every time.
Why
you had
would I
hollandaise.
not ask the sauce boss of Indianapolis?
There was
to
one
make the
time that
sauce for
Bridget
me?
made the hollandaise.
Yeah.
And then I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Other than I don't think Dyke. I don't know if he makes
Like, yeah,
hollandaise.
because I feel like I've seen you make hollandaise before. At,
no, he
the
like
old
he
place.
just stirs some mayonnaise in the corner and then has me do it, and then that's where you get.
That's how you make it, right?
Yeah.
Editing's a really wonderful thing.
And then I did the crab stuffed zucchini. I got to borrow and play around with one of my friends' vegetable sheeters with a little KitchenAid attachment. So I don't know. It's just like there's a certain kind of food nerd that's excited about this. Like I was excited to borrow it. He was excited to show me how to use it. You know, and then like I get here day of and I'm started struggling. Like I had bought all these zucchinis and like half of them weren't working, and I'm just like, this damn thing's not working the way it's supposed to. But yeah, you got these just basically paper thin sheets of zucchini, and then wrapped it up and like a nice like little crab dip. And I didn't want to do anything like too crazy, so it was just like crab and then like some like herb garlic, like Boursin cheese, a little Old Bay, and like some green onion.
Let me just tell you.
And what was the wrap?
It was just paper thin zucchini. So that's the gourd. It's
Yeah.
just wrapped in the, and then it was like you know, I wanted to be a nice chilled dessert. So like when you originally do it, it's so thin. As soon as you sheet it, it starts drying out. It's almost like paper, right? Mm-hmm. So then I put the stuff in. All right, first I kept the sheets in water because I was like, this guy's gonna dry out and be gross. It'll be weird to eat, like eating like weird paper. So I put it in water, and then I would just like roll them out real quick, and then I just put them in the fridge until they were ready. And then it was like a nice chilled, you know, dessert, whatever. It wasn't.
It was the sheet.
Thank you.
Count it. Count it.
And then Zach, you had the next course.
The next thing I did was a pumpkin risotto. I made the risotto. I also poached an egg in apple cider, and then I had some brie in the risotto as well as a brown butter that I poured over top.
Yeah, that's where I had to like pull back a little bit on the
I
accelerator.
noticed that you got hesitant.
I got because on that one, and I love it, but it was so rich.
Yeah.
And so good. I thought if I do that, then I'm going to say, hey, can you got a pillow and a blanket?
Yeah,
exactly.
I'll be back in about 15.
Yeah.
A lot of times at these tables, I feel like it's the Odyssey. I'm like, don't go towards the sirens. You guys, like, this is out here right now. If you go for seconds, you will die. And so,
When we have changed it up, we used to do things like drop our pasta or our rice dish at the very end of the meal, like almost as a dessert. And we stopped doing that because that usually upset the guests.
Yeah. Sometimes
Their stomach.
Sometimes
Yeah.
the heaviest thing would come. Every once in a while, we would drop a dish after dessert. That would really mess with people. Some people were like, "Oh, I made it." And that was like the Shyamalan twist at the end.
Spaghetti and meatballs.
yeah.
I always hated to be the presenter at a conference, right? That you're like the 1:30 speaker on the third day of the conference, and that's when they decide to serve pasta. They
You don't want to listen to anyone else.
They lower the lights down. They got it chilled in the room, and all of a sudden it's like,
Everybody's just snoring during your speech.
The biscuits are great. So I think this one I did just for the pun, which was oh my gourd Becky, look at her butternut. Butternut squash. No, that's the wrong one. Sorry. This was the acorn squash biscuits and gravy. Which was, so I like the biscuits and gravy I've traditionally done. Like I used to be the brunch chef at Blackacre when they first opened, and I would do a fried biscuit with either like a chorizo gravy or I would do like a veggie gravy. And so this was a play on that. I knew I wanted to do something with squash, sausage, Parmesan, and sage. And that became like a few different things. Like first I was just kind of like going to roast it all together. Then I was going to make it into a soup.
Yeah.
And then one of my chef friends is like, "Why are you not just doing biscuits and gravy with that?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a way better idea." And so did that, served it with a little fried sage there, and it's like it's totally different. Like if you're not used to that fried biscuit and gravy, I feel like it's a fun departure for people.
You could have pulled that. It was almost like a cinnamon roll. It had that taste there to it, to where, if you didn't have the gravy on it, you could have had some icing there on it. Had that as a separate one and a crunch. It was.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird donut, kind of thing. But I was pleasantly surprised about how the squash actually blended into the biscuit gravy. And I was like, I didn't want it to be like a weird thing where it's like, I see what you were trying to do here. Like,
this is baby food and biscuits.
Baby food and biscuits.
I was trying to avoid baby food and biscuits for sure. But also, man, there was something about like that acorn squash. It's not something I eat a lot of. And so it roasted up real nice. And I really enjoyed like just like the natural flavor of it. And then, real quick at the end, we just butternut squash bread pudding with friend of the show, Circles Ice Cream. Circles Ice Cream. Are you familiar with them?
No, I will be now though.
Oh my word!
The best hands down ice cream in town, and it's I've known this guy, the owner Wes. I've known him from like concept where he would come in with his test flavors.
And where are they located?
So they're located downtown, but they're only open like one day a week, I think, to the public. But they have these ice cream vending machines around town. So there's one at Wildwood Market. There's one at Goose or not Goose Market, but Smoking Goose.
Really?
And then you go in. Ice cream has these weird kind of rules about how they can operate or whatever. So like one of the workarounds for getting it into markets was, he has his own separate like freezer with basically like a QR code on it, and you just go up and you just pay with your phone and just buy it straight out of the thing. It's like a vending machine.
If you're a fan of ice cream, be careful, because I turned some of my friends onto this. I'm like, hey, you should go check out some Circles Ice Cream. They're addicted to it now.
Yeah.
They go every week and they talk to me about it all the time. So
well, and he cracked the code for me because like I'm a fat kid from the 80s and 90s, so like I grew up on like Dairy Queen with like that Blizzard, and basically he perfected like almost like a Blizzard in a pint, where it's just like it's ice cream and then like a layer of topping, and then ice cream, layer of topping, ice cream, layer of topping. So it's not like I've had so many ice creams where they put a little bit of topping at the top, and then once you get into the first quarter, there's no more topping. There's no more flavor. And then so he layers it, so even when you're at the bottom, it's consistent all the way through.
Did I just see a chocolate peanut butter and jelly ice cream cone?
This was it. This was the pumpkin roll ice cream that was served with the squash bread pudding. And this is great. And the saddest thing about this for me is that I know most people, as soon as Halloween's over, they don't mess with pumpkin until next year. And this was so good. Heck with your pumpkin lattes and your pumpkin spice whatever. This pumpkin roll ice cream.
Yeah. Don't talk pumpkin with me unless you've had pumpkin ice cream.
Yeah,
right? That's kind of weird.
Like, look at these beautiful pictures. Look at that chocolate PB&J. Like,
what is that?
He really is just like I sent him a picture. I said I made this today. He was like, oh my gosh, this looks great. I was like, how was it? Like, it was great.
We'll have to think about them when we do the spring dinners. Like this last year, we expanded it to 3 chefs each week instead of 2, and the third chef we added on was pastry chefs.
Yeah,
because we wanted to bring the attention to say, that's a discipline, and they have a following that's there. It gives me a great idea of bringing them in on the dessert side for next year. But that's why we're doing what we're doing there.
Exactly.
It's like that falls into the pillar of products, right? Yep. And whether it's ice cream there, or we've had Maple Leaf Farms. You guys know that Maple Leaf Farms is the largest processor and distributor of duck products.
Of what
duck products in the country?
Oh,
they're up slaughtering 40,000 ducks a day at their processing plant. It's an amazing operation.
I mean, Zach slaughters ducks every day too, but his numbers are not close.
It's like
to
2
that.
or 3. Neighbors don't like it when I do that. They're
Recreational.
not my ducks.
Like the last quack is always the toughest.
The
right?
last quack is definitely
They're
the
not even
toughest.
ducks.
I'll just say
I
this.
just say ducks.
Yeah.
Speaking with our gourd theme, I don't think
Possums.
Gordon Bombay would like that. Duck slaughtering.
That was good.
Mighty-
That was good.
Any Mighty Ducks fans out there? Can I get a help? Can I get an amen for that? Amen.
Can I get a flying V? Can I get a flying V?
Ducks get slaughtered together.
So tell us about like all of the different events that you guys do throughout the year.
Sure. We tabled them or sort of marked them as initiatives. I told you about the food sports competition, so we'll be down there with them, and we're really pushing to advance that whole theme of food sports competition, and we're currently working on hopefully at some point to bring that championship to Indianapolis. That's our goal. Our goal is to become the food sports capital of America.
Let's go.
And it fits in with, when you take a look, I think Heather was talking about it in terms of what we do in sports marketing, and Sports Corp has been out there, and their whole theme is where, champions are crowned. And food sports competition falls right into that same area, just as gaming does today, right? I mean, it's turned into this big dollar, high profile, same thing with food sports competition. So we'll be working on that. We have a big partnership with Ivy Tech Community College, and especially their culinary school. They have 4 active campuses with culinary. They have had up to 6, but they got 19 campuses around the state. So anytime that we're going out around the state, we're partnering in with Ivy Tech Community College. And I bring that up because one of the initiatives that we have right now is at Skills USA, who does statewide competition, actually national competitions, a lot of discipline. They do it in the culinary arts for high school kids as well. So we're getting behind with Skills USA and Ivy Tech, and there'll be about 150 young kids from different parts of the state that'll start signing up here at the end of the year, and then they will compete in regional competitions and then come to Indianapolis next April for the championship.
That's great.
And so we're putting that as an initiative to sort of raise the awareness, because that goes in with having young kids to not think of culinary as sort of the last result or last resource if they're going to go down the road, of thinking proactively about a career in that.
Yeah.
And so that's an initiative. And then finally, on the having the dinner series, we've talked about the spring dinner series, but from the beginning, we decided that says this is a statewide initiative. That was important. Everybody was involved. Going back to my experience in working with travel and tourism organizations, you always would hear the states of saying, hey, we've got this statewide initiative, and then never get out of the large city, the capital, or whatever the case would be. And said we just didn't, want that to be, part of the equation, nor did the folks that we were working with. So we started the On the Road dinner series. And so it's been a great project for myself. It's sort of like going back and doing Indiana history again, because I go out and doing the homework. So go down and find out who's making things happen in the culinary scene in Evansville, New Albany, and Fort Wayne, and uncovering that, and then bringing those same sort of resources together. We did one in Evansville last October. We did one in New Albany in May. We've just put in the finishing touches for doing one in Fort Wayne in February.
Nice.
And then got discussions for doing one up in the region area, Lafayette and Terre Haute. And it's amazing because, one, when we go up there, in terms of social media and earned media, it's a great play. Here comes a statewide program that comes into the area. It ends up getting bipartisan. Everybody wants to be involved in it.
Right.
So we're working with the local government, irrespective of what party they are. Ivy Tech Community College is involved, the tourism organizations in that area, the chefs, and then the business owners. And if you think about it, all of those organizations have a vested interest in culinary.
Yeah.
It all plays into their brands. It all plays into what they're trying to accomplish. And so that's a really important initiative for us. And then this January, we're going to start a bi-weekly newsletter, email newsletter. Old school, but still, when you think about a very powerful tool, is still email. That's going into everybody's. And every 2 weeks, we're going to split the state by north, central, and south, and have 5 to 7 culinary related events that we're going to highlight that are taking place at that time. Yeah. And we're going to identify a different restaurant in those areas and write a story about it.
I love that so much.
That's great. I'm really excited. You were naming off all those cities, and Fort Wayne is one of those cities that I think gets slept on so much, not just for culinary, but for a lot of stuff. Like, especially for culinary. I know a lot of chefs up there. Like, that's a place I went for to like hang out for my birthday, just to treat myself. I was like, I just want to hang out in Fort Wayne and like go to these breweries and eat this food.
It's a cool, the downtown area is very cool.
Really cool.
They've got the new Bradley Hotel that's down there, and a bunch of restaurants are in that area. But that story resonates in different parts of the state. And the argument that I would make and that we would make is say, getting more exposure for those areas is the best thing that can happen to make Indianapolis even cooler.
Yeah.
It's cool right now. I love what John Brooks said. It's not New York style culinary. It's not Chicago. It's Indy.
Yeah.
And that culinary scene, as well as deciding to come and live in Indiana, is the fact that says if you plop down here within 3 hours or less, you can be in all these great little areas and drive to it. And when you think about with metropolitan areas, that's nothing. My sister lives out on the North Fork of the Long Island, and every time that they're going anywhere, they're driving 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
And you can go out there and have that experience. So the idea there is to sit there and say, we win by helping each other to get the exposure.
Yeah.
And it's resonating. That's exciting.
And I think that speaks to more than just like culinary. Like that's even like we say the same thing about like comedy and stuff. It was like
absolutely
the rising tide raises all boats, and I think when Indianapolis does well in kind of anything, that we all do better.
Yeah. The brand connects over to the others, the arts, for music, for comedy, those all come in under, the umbrella. We started with Culinary Crossroads, but we hope, and, thanks to meeting folks like you, we learn more about here's what's happening on the comedy scene. Mm-hmm. Here's what's happening on the music scene. Mm-hmm. And that all comes into content. Mm-hmm. And, the low-hanging fruit for all that we're doing is people go to our restaurants, buy our products. We have great agricultural products throughout the state. The more strategic side of it is that, just like we were talking about with those young professionals, if you're trying to recruit folks to come and work for a business, whether it's large or small, you may know you want that individual. That individual may want to come and work for you, but they're just not sure that they decided they want to come and live in the Midwest and live in Indiana. Mm-hmm. That's the strategic. The more content that we get, the more people that talk about Culinary Crossroads, the more that ends up being an asset, so that you don't have to sell them one-off every time when you're recruiting somebody.
Yeah.
You can sit there and say, follow Culinary Crossroads, go to their programs. We'll take you to some of their programs. And if we have those type of activities that are happening throughout, any time that people are coming in, they can find something to do underneath that brand.
I love that. And it's also too just like that positive talk, like what we were talking about, like you said, all rising tides. Like the more you can support and like even fit in the conversation, like who you're proud of in your city, you really do become that ambassador of your space. And so that's really important. That's what you're doing all over.
We're doing that. And the other thing too is we're not looking, nor should we be the ones to create all the events. We've told folks from the beginning is that we want to put a megaphone on something that is really good and get more people to know about it.
Yeah.
When there's something that we think that we can create, then let's go and create it and let everybody rally around it. So it's that mix. So, we get folks like you all that are saying, yeah, you know what? We live at the Culinary Crossroads. I mean, that getting people to put that into the way they describe where they live, it's everybody's brand, right? And that's really what we're working towards. And we do things there to just sort of keep water in the sponge, build the narratives. But all of a sudden, you guys say, you know what? We are the Culinary Crossroads.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody, we want that to be where somebody takes that and runs with it.
So you may want to get behind I don't know, let's say like a meat cake invitational, like if a bunch of chefs got together.
Well, you didn't get lost on me. I'm wondering, you're asking Upland to kind of help you. Like, where?
We want everyone to help us,
yeah.
Like, how do we get in?
Yeah, no, we're interested in those types. I mean, when we do the initiatives, we like to find folks that can take out there and run it. They understand, they embrace the message, And if everybody is sort of staying consistent with the idea, you guys all know brands. We all know what brands are.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Have everybody to stay on message all along the way. Do your programming, but at the end of the day, think about it. You know, what you're doing is you're talking about people, products, places, and services. And you're talking about culinary. That's the kind of stuff we get excited about. So, you know, when I had the opportunity to come in here and talk about it, knowing that what you guys are doing, reaching out there, that's, you know, we all win with that.
We all win.
Where do you see like the future of Culinary Crossroads going?
I see it just as I was talking about, that it would be people would, when they would think about Indiana, and they would think about culinary, people would say, "Oh yeah, you know, that's the Culinary Crossroads."
There we go.
If we get it to that point to where it ends up being associated, Naptown, I heard that in the right.
Yeah.
Naptown ended up being a really cool brand at that particular time, right? They took that and made that a very cool brand, and everybody sort of rallied around that. That's the biggest strategic side of it. So if we get that to where, whether it's chefs or people that are in social media or businesses, that they describe it, says, "Oh yeah, we live in the Culinary Crossroads, and here's all the things that are happening there," that would be a big victory.
We changed the name to Naptown because there's so much food, like you're going to have to take a nap, right? Because it used to be, right, Naptown, because there's nothing going on.
There used to be, and they turned that, right? To make that was actually a pretty cool, hip way to talk about it.
Naptown culture.
Yeah. So that's where, you know, and if we get the World Food Championships, and we're going to keep going at that. I mean, you know, fingers crossed. If we get that, imagine that year in, year out, we're hosting the World Food Championships. And some of the themes that we play around with is that, you know, one of the things that they do so many good things with taking the 500 and building around that.
Yeah.
So they do the whole This Is May initiative, right? Imagine this is October.
Yeah.
Right? And this is October, when everybody comes and rallies around food sports competition. We reach out to all the different agricultural activities around the state, and everybody comes in during that month with a number of different programs.
And then everybody eats gourds.
And everybody's like, gourds. Gourds are us. Yeah. So that's you know, we're but it's just like you're doing, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When we took our first initiative was those 7 to 8 people in 2019, taking them down to the World Food Championship, because one of the biggest challenges that we had, I said, "Hey, we got this brand," and I was asked by our underwriters, say, "Well, you know, what do you want?" I said, "Well, first of all, do you think it's a good idea?" "Yes." "Okay, I'll be back to you," because, you know, when you come out finally and go, it says, "Okay, we're here. Let's keep going." And then, you know, for example, popcorn, getting back to popcorn, we've known for that same 3-year period of time that we needed to find a way to speak to the young professionals. That was a different message carriers and message, but still within the same brand. But you just never know for sure when you've got the right team,
the right
team, the right energy, and the right people in place. And combination of folks like Heather and Gwen, but also our teammates and partners like John and Esteban, right? They've been, I could go on with Chris Healy. I could give a bunch of names, Craig Baker, there's so many of them, they've watched us and seen what we're doing, and we can come to them and say, "Hey guys," and they're great. You know, they are the chef ambassadors.
They are. What's your what are you whipping up in the kitchen? What is your culinary background? What do you like to cook?
You know, I'll do a lot of different pastas. I'll play around with. I try to play around with meat. Nothing overly sophisticated, but you know, I like to do stuff with chicken. I like to do stuff with pork. Pork, I've come, you know, for Jenny and I, and we eat at home. Maybe it was that's from the pandemic where we had to, right? But we still have, for us, we're built around cooking. I'm the one that cooks and do the meal planning.
Yeah.
So I like to play with different proteins. And with different rubs or spices there with them, and then surround that with various fresh vegetables and some different pasta. Nothing overly fancy, but you know, good food day in, day out where it's fresh. It just you feel better with it.
Absolutely, good, wholesome, clean cooking.
Yeah, like that's more than I do. So,
well, I grew up, you know, going back to background. Everybody's, you know, always wondering, well, where did you get that? when I was growing up, my grandfather, a lot of times usually it was the women who was in the kitchen that was cooking, but my grandfather, which was, worked on the railroad and was a hunter and came up from Kentucky, as I was telling you, he cooked most of the meals. Yeah. And, so he had the cast iron skillet and the beans that are being made and good old fresh vegetables that were there. And I grew up with saying, hey, that's a great way. And I saw where everybody rallied around it. So when I cook, it's not overly sophisticated, because a lot of times the folks that you're with, I don't necessarily know how to do it, but they don't necessarily want it. But the things that that you can stretch them out with, and then, come in and kind of serve them. Yeah. And I've always thought that if you create an environment where we love to entertain over at our place, whether it's 4 people or 14, that they'll say, well, what are you going to do? And they'll say, well, LD will cook. Yeah. And I love it. That, right? Then you just got everything. There's no surprises, and people can relax. It's so important. You hit them with that hospitality, and then you don't know that Zach burned a bunch of bread. You know what I'm saying? It's just like they're just so happy.
Yeah, we put it outside where it needed to be.
I was wondering, that bread wasn't in the course.
Yeah.
You burnt bread.
Yeah, it stayed in there too long.
That's how you burn things. Real quick. I had a question before we drop any beat. How do you feel about White Castle now? This is an honest question, because he was telling us of the story. Like, he was telling how his family would get into a wagon, a Volkswagen, was it?
No, it was a station wagon.
Station wagon. Even
first
of all, you said wagon like it was a covered wagon.
That was rude. And
a couple people died of dysentery along the way.
And when we got it down to 2 weeks instead of 2 months to make the trek, when we got that motorized car,
you got to chalk the wheels every time.
The horses would die, and you'd have to. So that was the original Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. You would come from Anderson, right?
Yeah, we come from Middletown, east of Anderson. I was just telling them, be my dad and mom, and then basically they're cousins, but we were like uncles. And then they had 2 boys the same age as me and my brother. So they put four guys would be in the back of the station wagon. Obviously the wives would sit in the guys' bed there, and the trip was to drive to the White Castle, which was out by where it used to be the TP by the State Fair. And drive in. And I was saying, sit back, how many White Castles are you going to have tonight? Man, I'm going for 4. No way, you are going to have 4. Yeah, I am. And so we get there, we'd all sit in the car, and the guys would get out. Next thing you know, man, they're just bringing out like big old sacks of White Castles and drinks. We never got out of the car. They'd just bring them in there, and then we'd eat them, and then we'd drive back home. But it was like
driving to the big city and get the White Castles.
Getting the White Castles.
Yeah.
So are you still a fan of White Castle, or is it?
You know what? I would love a White Castle. Usually when I'm getting the White Castle is when most people I know are getting White Castle. It's like 1 o'clock. And I just and
there's a lot of shame associated.
And I love it, but you got to want it, because it's the gift that keeps on giving.
For sure.
I like to almost every year I make a White Castle stuffing, because if you get a sack of 10, like no pickles.
Yep.
It's pretty much stuffing. A little chicken stock to it, a little celery, and
there you go.
Chop it up, and it's stuff that bird with it.
Yeah. So I'm still a White Castle. And I'm a Waffle House person. And some of the chefs that I know will tell you, says they love going to a Waffle House. Because if you want to see where it is where it is working, you go into a Waffle House, and that guy or gal that's on that grill and everybody's moving. Talk about a smooth running.
And so there's famous Anthony Bourdain took another chef to a Waffle House, or no, another chef took Anthony Bourdain. He'd never been to Waffle House. It's, if you ever have 15 minutes, it's one of the best things ever. It's just they're at the end of the night of drinking, and this Southern chef takes Anthony Bourdain to Waffle House, and then they just take a tour of the menu, like they're at the French Laundry, but it's just the server's smoking while she's cooking for him. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you drop a beat for the music? Oh my gosh, Larry, we could talk to you for another 3 hours.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming by today.
Thank you guys, and I appreciate you participating with us at the popcorn event, and I'm just exciting to have you as colleagues and friends and partners. And
we love this stuff. We love it more than anything, and it's what I'm the most excited about doing is these kind of fun partnerships with other people that are also doing interesting stuff.
Yeah, and kudos to you all because of the
thank you.
contribution that you're making because that's how it all comes together. So it's been a real treat.
Where can people find Culinary Crossroads and keep up with everything that's going on?
Yeah, they can old school website, culinarycrossroads.org. That's where you can get kind of vet us out and see everything. At Culinary Crossroads IN on Facebook. I know and we have that on Instagram as well.
Nice.
We tell a lot of stories out on Facebook. And usually I stay behind the scenes and let the brand do the work.
Well, you guys have so many awesome things going on. I think you definitely want to make sure to get out there and follow it. So you know where the awesome things are going on. Daddy Shay McKee, how about you?
You can find me at Thad McKee on Instagram and Twitter, and any new sites that are going to come up. It'll be at Thad McKee, depending on what time you're listening to this podcast in the future.
Zach Ronald?
I'd actually like to pass mine over to Casey, who does an incredible job on our video most weeks.
Oh, look at that. He's crying.
Not crying, just have nothing to play. You can find me. You can find me in a dope ass dress in St. Louis.
Thank you, Casey. Also, I think it's funny that Zach said most weeks. Like sometimes he does a real bad job.
Well, yeah, no, just the weeks that you're here is what I meant. Like I didn't mean,
Wow.
I'd say it's a solid 80% when you're here.
You used it as a diss. That was shameful.
It's a passive-aggressive
Sometimes
plug.
there is some phoning it in, but no, you always do an amazing job, and we appreciate you. Guys, we have an amazing Patreon where Thad and we are stand-up comedians, and we like to be a little silly sometimes.
It's a funny podcast.
We like to be fun.
Yeah, and you know it because they say they're comedians and they say it's funny.
Well, again, with the PAP, passive aggressive plug. It is. I think people like. Oh wait, I'm not listening to the After Brunch.
Yeah.
Anybody that's a comedy fan, you do want to listen to this because we get silly. It's only what, $3?
Only $3, and
we should up that.
It should be $50, I think, for the amount of hilariousness.
But if you get in right now, you can still get it for that floor price of $3.
Right now.
Just right
if
now.
You get it right now.
Look
right
at
now.
Look at the timer on your screen.
If you act now, you can only but also like the thing is too is like this isn't just like an extra episode a week. It is an extra episode a week, but you also have access to. It's basically like our version of the Disney Vault. Like you get the back. You have like 2 years of episodes.
I don't want to align myself with Disney.
No, okay. Well, like it's the Harder Brunch.
It's the Harder
Vault.
Brunch universe.
Yes.
Our HB Plus.
The Hardys
is our new streaming service.
Hardy Nation
for Hardy Nation.
It really is. You know what? There's a lot of controversy right now about Elon Musk and the $8 for Twitter.
Okay,
but for only $3, we'll undercut Elon Musk. I mean, you don't need Twitter. You just need these hilarious After Brunch episodes. It turns out this was not a good ad, and no, we love you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys for supporting, and we appreciate you. Have a good one.